Hello, I'm Tal Heinrich, spokesperson for the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Thank you for joining us for the daily briefing. I will start with a brief update before taking a few questions. Last night, two elderly Israeli women, Nurit Cooper, 79, and Yocheved Lifshitz, 85, were released from Hamas's captivity in Gaza. These women were kidnapped by Hamas during the October 7th massacre. Tragically, their 83 and 85-year-old husbands are still being held hostage in Gaza. The entire nation of Israel is glad to see these two grandmothers back home with their families. We thank Egypt and the Red Cross for their assistance in facilitating their release. These women, one second, we have an announcement here. Okay, we started the debrief a bit late because of sirens that went off here in Tel Aviv. Let's continue. These women who were released, in their own words, said that they went through hell. Mrs. Lifshitz recalls being beaten in the ribs with sticks, beaten so badly she could barely breathe. And this is after she witnessed the atrocities that took place in her kibbutz on October 7th, when more than half of the population was slaughtered in cold blood by bloodthirsty terrorists. It is also critical to address the propaganda war that is being waged by Hamas. Hamas is an ISIS-style jihadist group, a brutal, tyrannical, totalitarian regime. The concept of free speech or free press simply does not exist in Gaza. Hamas makes sure that anyone who steps out of line will suffer consequences. So let's be very clear. Facts and figures that emerge from the Gaza Health Ministry may as well be released by the Hamas Ministry of Propaganda. In the words of UK Prime Minister Sunak, that's a quote, "If we don't treat what comes out of the Kremlin as the gospel truth, we should not do the same with Hamas." We have a quick update on the latest figures. There are at least 220 hostages still being held by Hamas inside Gaza, and we continue to demand the immediate and unconditional release, safe return of each and every one of them. We urge the international community to apply all necessary pressure to ensure the release of all hostages. Israel continues its extensive efforts to secure the release of our hostages held by Hamas. The IDF launched an appeal to the citizens of Gaza to provide any information they might have regarding the whereabouts of the hostages. Israel is offering Gazans significant compensation and security assurances for their assistance. We remind the international community that the world has not been silent when the terror group Boko Haram kidnapped 276 schoolgirls. People of conscience everywhere should make their voices heard to ensure the release of Israel's over 220 hostages, including 30 children under the age of 16. Moving to our efforts to dismantle Hamas. The IDF has continued its strategic airstrikes against Hamas terror targets in the Gaza Strip. These include key operatives and military facilities such as weapons storage sites, underground terrorist tunnels, command centers, and observation posts. Yesterday, the IDF successfully eliminated Ibrahim al-Qasr, the head of the anti-tank missile array of Hamas's Northern Brigade. Al-Qasr was responsible for fatal attacks against multiple IDF soldiers. Thank you, and I will now take a few of your questions. If you have them, please type them in the chat box or also raise your hands. We have one hand, or we don't. Let's see. Anyone wants to ask a question? You can type it in. You can raise your hand on the Zoom, and we will unmute you. Okay, we see one hand. Jim Williams. Wait, we will unmute you in a second. Jim, go ahead. So Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Macron of France have met today in Jerusalem. Macron is the latest international leader who flew in to not only stand by Israel, but stand in Israel and demonstrate solidarity with the Israeli people. We really appreciate the fact that he has arrived here in the middle of the war, as other world leaders have done. President Biden, the Prime Minister of Romania. Yesterday it was the Dutch Prime Minister, the Greek Prime Minister, and U.S. bipartisan congressional delegations. And I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. But this international support is very important. What Macron specifically said today that was very significant is that he called to establish an international coalition to fight against terrorism. So just like was the case against ISIS, President Macron is calling to do the same in what pertains to the global war on terrorism, which Israel right now stands at the front lines of with our fight against Hamas. So that visit was extremely, extremely significant. And France, as you know, as a country that has been struck by terrorism, they know what terrorism means. Yep. Let's take another question.
Just put you on mute. The question is from Coach Whitehouse from the Globe Banner. President Macron declared this is a war for more than Israel's existence, but for effectively the West's existence. What other countries have gone that far?
Okay.
Do you want to take it?
Okay. Other.
You can just speak generally about the international support.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. I'll bring you off mute now.
Yeah. So there's another question about President Macron and the extent to which he went to frame this war of Israel against Hamas as a war of the civilized world against terrorism. This is exactly how we view it. And we hope that the entire civilized world will rally behind Israel in the call that terrorism should not be able, terrorists should not be able to get away with their actions with impunity. It is something that President Biden also stated when he was in Israel, or rather when he went back to the U.S. and delivered a very important speech. He said that we are facing an inflection point in history right now, and that terrorists should pay a price. That's a paraphrase on what he said, because he said if we don't do that, they will continue to sow more chaos and more destruction and more death. So we cannot send out any kind of soft messaging or soft response or a weekend message to every terrorist entity out there. This is why we expect to see very, very important international support, and also in what pertains, by the way, to the hostages. And I said it before in the debrief, just like was the case that the international community rallied behind the call to release the Boko Haram schoolgirls, who the ones who were abducted in Nigeria in 2014. That should be exactly the call of the civilized world right now. Release them. Release them. And it's very significant that we will have an international coalition that will speak in one very clear voice against terrorism. This is unacceptable. It is unacceptable. It cannot happen here. It cannot happen anywhere in the world. Okay. Do we have another question?
I put you on mute as you asked that. I'll let you ask it again. Off mute now.
Okay. Do we have another question? Anyone? Somebody wants to raise a hand or type it in? I don't think so. Let us check again. We're checking. Okay. I don't see any more questions, so that concludes our debrief for today. Thank you so much for joining us.